Wagner.
कौन सा है?
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. If you just acknowledge me, whether I am audible to everyone, whether my video is clear, and can you see the screen which I have shared? Kindly acknowledge me, please. All the participants are requested to please acknowledge whether my audio, video, and screen is clear. Okay, perfect. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, let's start with this session. Sorry for the delay. There was something went wrong. Some technical bugs were there. Let's start with this webinar, and let me share you first of all the objective of this webinar. That what actually the objective of the purpose of this webinar is. In this particular webinar, I'll be focusing more on the topic that is the correction of errors, and we all know that that is one of the most important topic with respect to the financial accounting paper, as it is not only important for financial accounting, that is F3 level, it is quite important for FA1 and FA2. With respect to the exam weightage and exam marking, if I would say, correction of errors itself will have a weightage of around 20%. Like, this topic is not tested in isolated. Sometimes it is tested with the other topics like control account, reconciliation, and accruals and prepayments and incomplete records. It means the overall weightage of that particular topic is around 20%, that is 15 to 20% of the paper. So it's a very important area. So I'm going to have a practice session for this one. And in this session, I have gathered a few questions that is very important, and the difficult one and the challenging one. And these questions were extracted from the ACCA Study Hub. As we all know that ACCA Study Hub is one of the best resource that has been provided by the ACCA. So thanks to ACCA first. And it's a latest material. Secondly, I'll be practicing the questions that is adopted from the ICAP, that is Institute of Chartered Accountant of Pakistan. So these are very good questions. So we'll practice this one. And before we start on with the practice, first of all, I would like to give you an overall introduction for the correction of errors, that what actually the correction of errors is first. Secondly, that what types of errors are there and how would these errors be affected in the financial statements. So let's have a start with this one. Okay, starting with the first one, that is what are errors and what are the correction of errors. Okay, let me give you an overview for the correction of errors, that what actually the correction of errors is. Okay, first of all, let me give you an example for this one. For example, if there was an accountant and he was about to record the sales, and the accounting entry for the sales invoice should have been account receivable debit and sales credit. Let's say with the amount of $2,000. With the amount of $2,000. This accounting entry should have been made by the accountant. But there was a problem because of some busy schedule. Accountant forgot to recognize this entry. Accountant didn't record it entry in their books. And now let me tell you, that was the entry that should have been made. Now what accountant did, basically accountant did nothing. Accountant did not record it any entry in their books. Now how to rectify this one, how to adjust this one? Definitely you would say that there is a need to record the entry again, like account receivable debit and sales credit will recognize or record this transaction. Now let me tell you, there are three entries. No, basically there are three columns in front of you. The first column would be known as the original entry. Original entry means that what actually they should be, what actually should have been done. Second column is the column for the errors, that what actually the accountant did. And the third column is known as the rectification of error, or we can say that the correction of errors. Let me give you another example for this one. Let me give you another example for this one. For example, the accountant purchased machine for cash. It means the accounting entry should have been made machine debit, cash credit with the amount of $2,000, let's say. But what actually the accountant did, accountant incorrectly recorded the building account. Instead of debiting the machine account, accountant debited the building account and credited the cash account with the amount of $2,000. Now that is the incorrect entry that has been recorded by the error. Thanks to our profession, in accounting profession, whenever we make an entry, there is no such penalty in it. You don't have to pay a huge cost for this one. Remember, if the doctor is making something error in their operation or in their medical side, definitely the effect of this is quite worse. There could be a danger for the life. But alhamdulillah, in that particular situation, in that particular profession, if we have made out some errors or we have mistakenly recorded something wrong, nothing to worry about this one. We have another option, that is to correct the error. Okay, one more thing that comes to the mind, that in order to record, in order to adjust this one, we can do something, that we can just cancel this out. We can just cancel this out, and instead of recording the machine, if the accountant has recorded the building account, we can simply make it that we can cancel out that building and record the machine. But that's not possible. Please remember, that's not possible. You must have studied in your earlier studies that computerized accounting system follows the validation technique. Now, what is that validation technique? Once you have posted the accounting entry, you cannot alter it, you cannot delete it, otherwise it would create a chance of misappropriation. So there is no option to alter that particular account. You cannot alter it. You cannot alter it. You cannot delete it. Once you have recorded the building account, you have debited the building account. Now, in order to correct, you have to make another entry. Now, what's the error? Is there anything wrong with the cash account? Nothing. There is no problem. There is no problem with the cash account. The cash account should have been credited, and accountant correctly recorded the cash account and credited it with $2,000. Now, what went wrong? There should be a debit of machine account with $2,000, but accountant debited the building account. In order to rectify, in order to correct this one, what we have to do now, we have to recognize the machine account. We will debit the machine account and surely will credit the building account with the amount of 2,000, as the building should have been debited. Sorry, machine should have been debited. We debited it, and there should not be a debit entry for the building, so we credited the building account. Again, that is the original entry. Again, that is the entry which accountant actually recorded, and this one is the correction of errors. So that is the overall introduction, that what correction of errors is. Sometimes accountants made an error, mistakenly recorded with the incorrect amount or the incorrect account. So we are here to recognize that error and to rectify it once. So that is known as what the correction of errors. Okay, now quickly I am moving towards the types of errors. Now, types of errors could be divided. There are few errors that affects the trial balance, but there are few errors that do not affect the trial balance. There is a need to understand this one, that what does it means, that affects the trial balance or that do not affect the trial balance. For example, if the accounting entry would have been made with the account receivable debit and sales credit with the amount of $4,000. Now, what actually the accountant did, accountant recorded the sales account, it means credited the sales account, but he was not sure of it. He was not sure of it, that what should have been debited. So instead of debiting an incorrect amount or assumptionary account, what accountant did? Accountant did not record anything on the debit side, which means the credit side have been recorded, but there is no account being recorded in the debit side. Once we will post this entry to the T account, which means sales will be credited, but there will be a no debit side. There will be a no debit side. And furthermore, once we will move on towards the another, that is the trial balance. That is the trial balance. So it means if the credit side have been recorded, but there is no entry on the debit side, the credit side would be higher. The credit side would be higher, and there will be nothing will be recorded in the debit side, which means now the trial balance will not be equal. We all know that trial balance should always be equal. Trial balance should always be equal, but there is an entry in the credit side, but there is no account balance on the debit side, which means this error is affecting the trial balance. So what does it mean by whenever we say that the errors are affecting the trial balance, which means debit and credit sides are not equal. Are you getting a point? Please, everyone, those who are participating in this session via Zoom online, please let me know. Please let me know. Is it clear to everyone that the errors, there are certain errors that affects the trial balance, and whenever we say that the errors are affecting the trial balance, it means the debit and credit side of that particular entry is not equal, which means these errors are affecting the trial balance. Is it clear to everyone? Please notify me through a chat box. Everyone is requested to please notify me through a chat box. Once I'll be completing with that introductory area, I'll be moving on towards the practice side. And remember, this session is known as what the practice to pass. So you guys will be practicing in that particular session. I will not be participating. I will not be practicing. You guys will be practicing. I will show you the question. You will try first. Then I will guide you that what errors or what blunders you are making out. Perfect. Okay. Let's move on again. Let's move on again. So errors which will affect the trial balance, which means the debit and credit sides are not equal. So it's obvious now, the errors which are not affecting the trial balance, which means that there is an error, but still the debit and credit side both are equal. So how is it possible? Let's quickly have this one. The example A and B is the clear examples that there is no effect on the trial balance. The debit and credit side will remain same. Let's have a look on the example A. Entry should have been account receivable, debit, sales, credit. Accountant did not record any entry in the books, which means there is no recording of debit side, there is no recording of the credit side, which means the debit and credit sides are omitted. Debit and credit sides are omitted, which means the debit and the credit total will remain same. Debit side and credit side of the trial balance will remain same. In the second error, machine, instead of debiting the machine account, accountant debited the building account, which means again, yes, there is an error. Yes, the accounts are incorrectly recorded, but still the debit and credit side of the trial balance will remain same. So this is what we say, that the error affects the trial balance and the errors do not affect the trial balance. Whenever we see that affects the trial balance, which means the debit and credit side will never be equal. And whenever we see that errors do not affect the trial balance, which means the debit and credit side will always be equal. Okay. Now let's start with the errors do not affect the trial balance first. Let's have an example for these errors, that what sort of errors are there, that there are mistakes, but still the trial balance is equal. Mark my words. What I said, there are errors. Accounting entries are incorrect, but still the trial balance will remain same. The debit and credit side of the trial balance will remain same. Okay. The first example is the error of commission. Now, what is error of commission? What is error of commission? Let me give you an insight for this one. What is error of commission? For example, there was an accounting entry that should have been made. Salary expense debit and cash should have been credited with the amount of $1,000. For example, this was the original entry. This should have been made in the accounts. Okay. Now, what accountant did basically? Accountant recorded the rent expense debit and cash is credited. Now, let me know through the chat box whether that particular accounting entry is correct or incorrect. Please let me know. Let me recall first. That is the original entry. Salary expense debit, cash credit. This should have been made by the accountant. But incorrectly, accountant recorded the rent expense account debited and cash is credited. Rent expense account is debited and cash account is credited. Whether the accountant has recorded the correct entry or the incorrect entry, please let me know. Whether that particular accounting entry which has been recorded by the accountant is correct or incorrect. Please let me know. Please let me know through the chat box. Yes, please, everyone is requested. Shankar, very good. Excellent. Yes, other participants are also requested to please participate in this one. Okay, that is an incorrect entry. That is an incorrect entry. This should not have been recorded. Actually, the original entry should have been salaries, expense debit, and cash credit. Now, that error will not affect the trial balance. And what happened here, that is, the accountant should have recorded the salary expense account, and yes, accountant recorded the expense account, but with the incorrect account, incorrect title. Incorrect title is being recorded. Incorrect title is being recorded. So whenever the incorrect title is recorded, what I said, incorrect title is recorded. Incorrect title is recorded, which means the head of account is same. The head of account is same, but incorrect title is recorded. Such error is known as what? The error of commission. Such error is known as error of commission. The expense account should have been recorded. Yes, the accountant recorded the expense account, but with the incorrect title. Instead of recognizing the salary expense account, he recorded the rent expense account. It means that error is known as what? The error of commission. So that is the first error, that is the error of commission. Let's move on towards the another error that is quite similar to that one. That is quite similar to that one. Please be focused. For example, an accounting entry should have been recorded, that is machine debit and bank credit, with the amount of $2,000. This entry should have been recorded. That is the original entry. That is the original entry. But incorrectly, accountant incorrectly debited the repair expense account. Repair expense debit and bank credited. Repair expense debit and bank credited. This entry made by the accountant. Again, whether it's an incorrect entry, yes. Machine account should have been debited. It means capital expenditure should have been recorded. Am I right? Capital expenditure should have been recorded, but incorrectly, accountant recorded the revenue expenditure. Accountant recorded the revenue expenditure, that is the repair expense debit and the bank credited. Now again, what happened so far? Sir, this looks so similar. No, it's not similar. There is a difference. What is the difference? That machine account should have been debited, and don't forget, machine is an asset account. It's asset nature. But what accountant did? Accountant recorded the repair expense. It means it recorded the expense account, which means the asset should have been recorded, but accountant recorded the expense account, which means the head of account is changed. Incorrect head of account is recorded. Incorrect. Nature is changed. There is the error of principle. You have done the breach of the rules and regulations. You have done the breach of the principle, which means incorrect head of account is recorded. Incorrect head of account is recorded. Incorrect head of account is recorded. That error is known as what? The error of principle. That error is known as what? The error of principle. Again, remember, this error will not affect the trial balance. And whenever we say that this will not affect the trial balance, which means the debit and credit side would remain same. Instead of there is an error, but still the trial balance would remain same. Okay, third error, that is the error of reversal. Error of reversal. Now, what is error of reversal? For example, the accounting entry should have been recorded like building debit and cash credit with the amount of $2,000. Building debit and cash credit with the amount of $2,000. This should have been recorded. But incorrectly, what accountant actually did? Accountant debited the cash account and credited the building account. Cash debit and building credit. Cash debit and building credit. Is it the correct entry? Not at all. What actually the accountant did? Accountant reversed the original entry. Accountant reversed the original entry. It means the building should have been debited. Instead, what accountant did? Accountant debited the cash account and credited the building account. If the accounts are reversed, such error is known as what? The error of reversal. If the debit is being recorded on the credit side and the credit is being recorded in the debit side, such error is known as what? The error of reversal. Okay, moving on to the fourth type, that is the error of complete omission. Now, what is that complete omission? There was an accounting entry that should have been recorded with the purchase invoice. That means purchases debit and accounts payable credit. This should have been recorded with the amount of $3,000. Let's say that was the original entry. Now, what accountant did? Accountant did nothing. Forgot to record that particular transaction. Accountant forgot to record that particular transaction. Now, omission means that you forgot to record the transaction. The transaction or the entry was omitted from the account, and it's a complete omission. Neither the debit nor the credit is being recorded. Now that error is known as what? The error of omission. Basically, the error of complete omission. Again, this error will not affect the trial balance, as if no debit and no credit is being recorded. It means the complete entry is omitted. This will not affect the trial balance, which means after incurring that particular error, still the trial balance will remain same. Okay, now that is the another error of original entry, and we can say that the error of compensating. Now, what is that error of compensating? For example, the accounting entry should have been recorded with the amount of $4,000, account receivable debit, and sales should have been credited with the $4,000. What accountant did actually? Accountant recorded the entry perfectly. Account receivable debit and sales credited, but recorded with the incorrect amount on the both sides. If the incorrect amount is recorded, incorrect amount is recorded on both sides. On both sides, such error is known as what? Compensating. Such error is known as what? Compensating. Such error is known as what? Compensating. So compensating error means if the incorrect values and amounts are recorded on the both sides, that is known as what? Error of original entry, or we can say that is known as what? The error of compensating. Is it clear to everyone? Please notify me through a chat box. Compensating. Such error is known as what? Compensating. Is it clear to everyone? Okay, Tamur. Great, Shankar. Okay, now let's move on towards the sides. Those errors that would affect the trial balance. Those errors that would affect the trial balance. Number one, the error of partial omission. Don't forget, we just have studied that there is a complete omission. Complete omission will never affect the trial balance, as if no debit and credit is being recorded, which means the trial balance would remain same. But if there is an error of partial omission, let's take an example for this one. There was an accounting entry like purchases debit and accounts payable credit. This entry should have been recorded with the amount of $3,000. What accountant did actually? Accountant recognized the purchases account and debited the purchase account, but forgot to credit the another account, which means debit side has been recorded, but no entry is being made on the credit side. Now that is known as what? The omission. Omission means that you forgot to record it. But omission from the one side, either the debit or the credit, that omission is known as what? The partial omission. Which means there is a debit entry, there is a debit side, but no credit side. It means now the trial balance would remain unbalanced or imbalanced, which means this will affect the trial balance. Error of transposition. Now, what is error of transposition? Error of transposition is, for example, the entry should have been made account receivable debit and sales credit with the amount of $6,000. This entry should have been made with the amount of $6,000. Now, what actually happened? Account receivable debited with 600 incorrectly, and sales was credited with the amount of $6,000, that is with the actual amount. Now again, the account receivable incorrectly debited with the amount of 600 instead of 6,000. Now would this error would equals the trial balance? Not at all. Which means now the account receivable and sales are recorded. Account receivable is recorded with the incorrect amount, which means this error will affect the trial balance, and now the debit and credit would remain imbalanced. So this error is affecting the trial balance. This error is known as what? Error of transposition. At times it is also known as what? Error of posting. Now the last error, that is the error of reversal. Okay, wait. We have also seen the example of error of reversal over there, but there's something different. That if both accounts are debited, for instance, if there was an accounting entry is machine debit and cash credit with the amount of $1,000, machine debit and cash credit. But what accountant did? Machine was debited by $1,000, but accountant incorrectly debited the cash account, which means both accounts were debited. There is nothing on the credit side. There is nothing on the credit side, which means both the accounts are debited or both the accounts are credited. It means the cash account was reversed. That is known as what, the error of reversal, but complete entry was not reversed. One account was either, or the both accounts were debited or the both accounts were credited. That is known as what, the error of reversal. Again, this error would affect the trial balance, which means the debit and the credit side of the trial balance would remain imbalanced. Is it clear to everyone? Please notify me through a chat box. Is it clear to everyone? Okay. Now let's move on towards the practice side. Let's move on towards the practice side. That was the overall introduction of the errors and the types of errors. Let's move on towards the practice side. The question is on your screen. Remember, this is the practice to pass session and you all have to participate in this one. This session is for you and for your practice purposes. So these are the good questions and the difficult and the challenging one. You need to try this at your own first, and then I'll help you out that what actually you are making errors. So that is the trial balance or the information that is given. The different accounts are given: sales, purchases, irrecoverable debt, discount received, purchase return, sales tax owed to tax authorities. Can anyone please let me know that what actually it means? Sales tax owed to tax authorities. Is it the liability or the asset? Is it the liability or the asset? Notify me through a chat box, please, everyone. Very good, Tamur. Anyone else, please? Yes, anyone? Paid to authority, it's a liability. It's a liability. Sales tax owed to tax authorities, it's a liability. It's a liability. It's a liability. Sales tax paid owed to authorities. Always remember, whenever the O, the word or the term O, whenever you see the term O, it shows, it represents the liability. Okay. Sales tax owed to authorities, it's a liability. Now, let's read out the question. Which two of the following? Remember, always read the requirement properly. Which two of the following options concerning the Jacob's trial balance are true? There are four statements and you need to identify the correct one. You need to identify the correct one. Everyone is please requested to please check out the answer. What should have been the correct answer for this one? What should have been the correct answer for this one? There are four statements given in the question. Try to identify that what should be the correct answer for this one. You need to identify, you need to highlight two statements which are correct. Yes, which two of the statements is okay? Shankar, A. Anyone else, please? Sujal, C. Okay, Sujal, let's have a review on this one. Let's evaluate the statement C first. Okay, let's evaluate the statement C first. Let's evaluate the statement C first. Purchases and trade receivables would both be debit balance in the trial balance. Is it the correct option? Purchases. Let me know what actually the purchases. Purchases represents the which account, whether it's a liability, asset, expense, or revenue. Purchases, whether it's a liability, expense, revenue. Purchases. Very good. Excellent. It's an expense nature. It's an expense. And we know that normally the purchases is an expense nature. So it should have been recorded on the debit side. Similarly, trade receivables, account receivables. Accounts receivable, whether it's a liability, expense, or revenue. Accounts receivable, asset, liability, expense, or revenue. Yes, it's an asset account, and this should also be recorded on the debit side. So the statement is purchases and trade receivables both would be on the debit balance, on the trial balance. Is it the correct statement? Yes, it seems to be the correct statement. This seems to be the correct statement. Okay, Shankar, A and C. Let's evaluate the option A. Sales and sales tax owed to authorities. First of all, we just discussed this one, that sales tax owed to authorities represents the liability nature. It represents the liability nature. And what about sales? What about sales? What about sales? What about sales? Sales. What is the nature for the sales account? What is the nature? It's a revenue nature. Excellent. It's a revenue nature. It's a revenue nature, which means if it's a revenue nature, which means it should be recorded on the credit side. It should be recorded on the credit side. And sales tax owed to authorities, it's a liability nature, and liability should also be recorded on the credit side, which means sales and sales tax owed to authorities would both be credit balance in the trial balance. This shows the correct statement for this one. Very good. As majority of the students marked or answered the correct option, that is A and C is the correct answers for this one. Okay, let's move on to another question. That is question number 2. Question number 2 is on your screen. Indicate whether the following statements regarding the trial balance is true or false. Yes, please try to answer this one. Statement 1, that is the trial balance is used as a summary. Let me know about the first statement first. Shankar, let me know about the first statement. Whether the first statement is true or false. Whether the first statement is true or false. False. Very good. Excellent. A trial balance is used as a summary of the balances on some of the accounts in the ledger. Remember, whenever we make a trial balance, remember, whenever we prepare a trial balance, we list down all the ledger's account. The term sum of the accounts in the general ledger is an incorrect statement. The trial balance is used as a summary of balances. Yes, it's true. Basically, the trial balance is the summary of all account balances. It's not the sum of the account balances. It should have been the all account balances. So statement 1 is a false statement. What about the second statement? A trial balance contains the debit and credit. The total of the debit balance should always be equal to the credit balance. Yes, we have already discussed this one. This should have been the correct statement. Very good. Excellent. Other participants, please participate. What about the third statement? Third statement. Very good, Tamur. Shankar, please reconsider your answer. Sana, please reconsider your answer. The third statement is a trial balance highlights all errors. Please read the question properly. Read the statement properly. A trial balance highlights all errors made when posting transaction to the general ledger. Not at all. We just discussed it few moments ago that all errors cannot be identified through the trial balance. Just see this one. There are few errors which can be identified through the trial balance, but there are few errors which cannot be identified through the trial balance. So never say this one. Never say this one that all errors can be identified through the trial balance. No, all errors cannot be identified. There are few errors. For example, the machine account was incorrectly recorded as an equipment account. This is an error, but you cannot identify through the trial balance. Only those errors can be identified in which the debit credit side both are unequal. In that particular case, you can identify. G. Last one. What about the last statement? Every participant, every student or the candidate is requested to please give the answer for the last statement. A trial balance only contains the balances that will be used to prepare the statement of financial position. Is it the correct statement? Very good, Sujal. Very good, Temur. It's not the correct statement. It's a false statement. The trial balance carries the balances or the account balances that are used to prepare the financial position as well as the profit and loss account. Okay, great. Let's move on towards the next question. That is a question number 3. Question number 3. State whether each of the following items should be included in the equity or the liability section of the statement of financial position. Yes, please let me know. The first account balance is the loan notes. Where the loan notes will be recorded in the equity section of the liabilities. Yes, everyone, please participate in this one. Excellent. Loan notes will be recorded. Loan notes will be recorded as a liability. Loan notes will be recorded as a liability. Excellent. And redeemable preference shares. Let me recall you something. Let me recall you something. That there are two types of preference shares. We all know that. Yes, there are two types of preference shares. Let me give you a recap for this one. There are two types of preference shares. Number one is the redeemable. Number one is the redeemable. And the another one is the irredeemable. What if the examiner would have asked you regarding the irredeemable preference shares? Remember, irredeemable preference shares should have been recorded as an equity nature, while the redeemable preference shares are recorded as a liability nature. Reason being, because irredeemable preference shares are those shares or the investment made by the investment made by the investors will never be returned back. Will never be returned back. And there is an important feature of the characteristics. There is an important feature and the characteristics of the equity financing that the amount will never be repaid. So in that particular case, irredeemable preference shares will be recorded as an equity financing, and this will be recorded as an equity as it will never be repaid. Never be repaid. Yes, there is one situation that is at the time of liquidation, but that is very rare. So irredeemable preference shares are recorded as an equity financing and will be recorded in the equity. Yes, very good, Shankar. So redeemable preference shares are recorded as a debt financing or will be recognized as an equity. Nice, very good. Okay, let's move on towards the question number 4. The another question. Please try, everyone. Everyone, please should try this one. It's a very good question. Let me read out the requirement for you. There are certain list of balances. There are certain account balances given in the question. And what you have to do, you need to calculate the profit. How much profit did the company make during the year 30th June 20x8? You need to calculate the profit. First try. You must try this one. Remember, this practice to pass. This practice to pass session is for you guys. You need to practice it out. First you try, then I will let you know that how to solve this question and what should be the strategy for this one. Yes, I need the answers. Okay, great. Few answers are coming there. Nice. Very good. Okay, first of all, let me give you an insight for this one, that whenever we want to calculate the net profit, we have few options over there. Number one, the first option is to calculate the net profit. The first and the basic option we have, that is the revenues minus expenses. That is the income statement approach. Is it? In order to calculate the net profit, the first thing that we have, that is the revenues minus expenses. Another way to calculate the net profit is the accounting equation, which is asset is equal to liabilities plus opening capital plus or at the additional investment or capital introduced, either, plus net profit and minus drawings. It means we can calculate the net profit from that particular accounting equation. If we just got to know or the information is given regarding the assets, liabilities, opening capital, capital contributed or introduced during the year, and the drawings, so definitely we can calculate the amount of profit. Another way to calculate the net profit is the business equation. You guys must have studied. This is not the time that I can give you an insight or can have a practice for this one, but you must have studied in your studies. Closing net asset is equal to opening net assets plus capital introduced or the additional investment plus net profit and then minus drawings. So which means if the information related to the closing net assets and the opening net assets and additional investment or the capital introduced and the drawing is given, definitely we can calculate the net profit from that particular accounting equation. Now, when to utilize which accounting or which equation or the formula, this will depend on the data given in the question. Let's have a recap. Let's quickly see the data that is given in the question. First of all, let's try to identify. Very good, Shankar. Let's try to identify amount owed to supplier. Amount owed to supplier. It is representing the accounts payable. Thereby, it's a liability. Bank overdraft. It's a liability. Amount owed by customer. Can anybody please let me know that amount owed by customer? What actually it is representing? Very good, Shankar. It's representing the accounts receivable. Plant and equipment, obviously it's an asset. Inventory at year end, this will be representing as an asset. Capital will be representing as an equity. Motor vehicle again will be representing as an asset. Bank loan, obviously it's a liability, and drawings is a part of your equity. The first thing is confirm that in order to calculate the net profit, the first equation cannot be used as there are no revenues and expenses given in this particular question. Now let's try to identify the second one. Will this equation be applied? Please let me know, everyone. Very good, Tamur. Yes, accounting equation would be applied. We are going to apply the accounting equation. Okay. If we are going to apply the accounting equation, that is asset is equal to liabilities plus opening capital plus capital introduced or the additional investment plus net profit and minus drawing. Let's see what information that is given in the question. There are few information that is given in the question that is related to assets. Is it? Can anyone please give me the total of the assets? Can anyone please give me the total of the assets? Yes, anyone? Can anyone please give me the total of the assets? No, it's not Shankar. It's not the total of the assets. Very good, Tamur. Anyone else, please? Yes, Sujal. Sana, please participate in this one. Very good. 40150. 40150 is the total assets. And can anyone please give me the total of the liabilities? Tamur, liabilities. I just want the total of the liabilities. Yes, it's 9,000. We have liabilities like amount to supplier, it's a liability. Bank overdraft, it's a liability. And the bank loan, it's a liability. We just need to add up these three. So the liability total is 9,000. In addition, opening capital, is it given in the question? Yes, the capital at the start of the year is given, that is 20,000. Is there any additional investment or the capital introduced? No, it's not. So just leave it out. And we need to calculate the net profit, whether the information related to drawings is given in the question. Whether the information related to the drawings in the question. Yes, please let me know whether. Yes, it's given in the question, that is 38,000. 8,000 will be deducted. Now let's try to calculate the net profit. Let's try to calculate the net profit. What would be the amount of net profit, please? Yes, Sana, absolutely right. Net profit. Please calculate it. Calculate the net profit for the above equation. Very good, Tamur. 19,150. That is the amount of net profit. That is the amount of net profit. So the correct answer for this question is, option D. 19,150. Okay, let's move on towards another question. That is question number 5. Question number 5. Quickly move on towards another question. Question number 5. Kin recorded a sales of 6670 by debiting the receivables 6670 and crediting the sales with the 6760. The transposition error meant by the trial balance did not balance. So Kin included a suspense account to force it to balance. We all know that whenever the debit and credit side of the accounting entry is not equal, in order to make it equal and to process the accounting system, we always establish, or we always open a temporary account. That temporary account is known as what? The suspense account. Let me help you out in this particular question. Okay, Ken recorded a sales of 6670. It means the original entry should have been made with the amount of 6670. That should have been the original entry. Account receivable debit and the sales credit. Now what happened so far? By debiting the receivable 6670 and crediting the sales 6760, which means account receivable is being properly recorded. Account receivable is being recorded with the amount of 6670. But what accountant actually did, accountant credited the sales account with the 6760. Is this the error? Yes, this is the error. This is the error made by the accountant. The accountant recorded the sales with the incorrect amount, that is 6760, which means the entry for this one will not be equal, and unless the entry would be equal, the accounting will not be processed further. So we need to open a temporary account, and that temporary account is known as what? The suspense account. Now let me, please give me the answer for this one, where the suspense account would be opened, either on the debit side or the credit side. Yes, every participant is requested to please answer where the suspense account will be opened, either on the debit side or the credit side. Very good, Shankar. This will be opened at the shorter side, means the debit side, and this will be opened with the amount of what? With what value the suspense account will be opened on the debit side? With what amount the suspense account will be opened on the debit side? Yes, this will be recorded with the 90, and that entry is the original entry. And what actually the accountant did, that is the error. Now let's try to rectify this one. Let's try to rectify this one. Normally what I say, that whenever you want to rectify the entry, whenever you want to correct the accounting entry, what you have to do, first of all, remove the suspense account from your books. Remove the suspense account from your books. Once you will remove it, the correction would be easier for you. Now let's try to remove it. If we have recognized the suspense account on the debit side, in order to remove it from the accounts, we need to credit the suspense account. Remember, the suspense account is a temporary account. It's a temporary account. What we did, we credited the suspense account with the amount of 90. Now, once the suspense account has been removed from your accounts, now let's try to identify the mistake or the error. Account receivable should have been debited with the amount of 6670, and yes, account receivable was debited with the amount of 6670. It means there is no such error in that particular account. But yes, sales should have been credited with the amount of 6670. Instead, accountant credited the sales with the higher amount. Am I right? Accountant credited the sales with the higher amount, which means sales is over recorded, revenue is over recorded. We need to minimize, we need to decrease, we need to rectify this one. And in order to rectify this one, we need to reduce the amount of sales, and revenue decrease, it will be debited. Revenue decrease will be debited, which means sales account will be debited and suspense account would be credited. Sales account would be debited and suspense account would be credited. Is it? Sales account would be debited and suspense account would be credited. So the correct option should have been, the correct option should have been, the correct option should have been A, that is the sales will be debited and the suspense account will be credited. Is it clear to everyone? Yes, someone answered the option D. Someone, I guess someone answered the option D at the start. Okay, great. Let's move on towards another question. Question number 6. Question number 6. This question is again related to the accounting equation. Try to answer this one. Try to answer this one. Try to answer this one. Question number 6. You need to rearrange the accounting equation. You need to rearrange the accounting equation. You need to rearrange the accounting equation. And rearrange the accounting equation for the calculation of profit. For the calculation of profit, how are we going to do this one? What is the basic accounting equation for this one? What is the basic accounting equation? The basic accounting equation is asset is equal to liabilities plus opening capital plus additional investment, which means capital introduced, plus net profit and minus drawings. If we are going to calculate the amount of net profit, just see the example, whether indicate whether the following balances would be added or subtracted in the accounting expression. Just see the equation. What actually the examiner did, examiner rearranged that equation for in terms of profit. So in order to calculate the profit, let's try to do this one. Keep the profit over here and move all the account balances to the next side, that is on the other side of the equation. So what would be the situation? Net profit will be equal to assets minus liabilities. This will be transferred to the other side. The signs will be changed. Opening capital will be transferred to the other side. Again, the sign would be changed. Additional investment would be moved towards the other side. Again, the sign would be changed. And drawings will also be moved towards the other side. Sign would be changed. That is, it will be added. So in order to calculate the net profit, accounting equation would be assets minus liabilities minus opening capital minus additional investment and added by the drawings. So assets, and afterward assets, what would be the situation? What would be the situation? Minus liabilities. It means liabilities will be deducted. Is it? Liabilities will be deducted. Same. Liabilities will be deducted. Opening capital. Capital at the start will also be deducted. Capital at the start will also be deducted. Additional investment or the capital introduced during the period will also be deducted. And remember, the drawings will be added back. Very good, Tamur. Very good. Okay, let's move on towards another question. That is question number 7. Question number 7. Sony has extracted the balance from the ledgers and found that the trial balance does not balance. The debits are 136 higher than the credits, which means the debit side is greater than the credit side. If the credit side is shorter, which means the suspense account will be opened on the credit side, that is the shorter side. I repeat, if the debit side is more than the credit side, which means the credit side is shorter, the suspense account will always be opened on the credit side. That shows here that the suspense account has the credit balance. That shows the suspense account as the credit balance. He has identified that the error was caused by the transaction which had been debited twice to the fuel expense account instead of a single debit and a credit to the creditor's account. As a temporary measure, he has created the suspense account to force the trial balance to balance. Now, what should be the general entry need to clear the suspense account or to correct the error? It means you need to prepare the correct entry for this one. First, try at your own. Please, everyone is requested to please try. Try this question and try to give the answer for this question. Please, everyone is requested to please try this question. Okay, Sujal. Anyone else? Yes, what should be the answer for this one? Okay, great. Now, First of all, need to identify the original entry. We need to identify the original entry for this one. What should have been the original entry for this one? It is clearly mentioned over here that he has identified that the error was caused by the transaction which has been debited twice to the fuel expense account, which means the fuel expense account has been debited with the double amount instead of a single debit and a credit to other creditors, which means the original entry should have been fuel expense debit and creditor or accounts payable should have been credited. Is it? This should have been the original amount or the original entry. But what accountant did? Accountant recognized the fuel expense account only. It recorded the fuel expense account with the double amount. It recorded the fuel expense account with the double amount. Please listen to me very carefully. The original entry should have been fuel expense debit and the creditor should have been credited, which means accounts payable. But what the accountant did, he has identified the error caused by a transaction which has been debited twice to the fuel expense account instead of a single debit and a single credit, which means the accountant did not record it on the credit side anything. It did not record anything on the credit side. What he did, he debited the fuel expense account with the double amount, and with the double amount, and the double amount is 136. Double amount is 136, which means if nothing is recorded on the credit side, by default the suspense account will be opened on the credit side. That shows if 136 is the double amount, so what should be the original amount? What should be the original amount? Please notify me through a chat box. What should have been the original amount for this one? What should have been the original amount for this one? If fuel expense has been debited with the double amount and the double amount is 136, so what should have been the single amount? Yes, Sujal, it's 68, which means the original entry should have been made with the amount of 68. This is one of the best questions. This is one of the good questions. You need to understand this one. 136 is not the amount of the original entry. That is the difference which has been created. It means if both the accounts, if the accounts have been debited and no credit entry has been recorded, which means the fuel expense have been debited with the amount of 136. That is the double amount, which means the half or the single amount should have been 68. So fuel expense debit and creditor should have been credited with the amount of 68. Instead, what actually the accountant did, accountant debited the fuel expense account with the amount of 136 and he credited the suspense account with the amount of 136. Now, how we are going to recognize the correction of errors? Yes, anyone can please help me out? How I'm going to correct this error? Always remember the step one. Whenever you have opened a suspense account, in order to rectify this one, you need to clear this one. You need to cancel it out. You need to remove the suspense account from your books. And in order to remove it, we need to move this suspense account to the opposite side. That is, suspense account will be debited with the amount of 136. Suspense account will be debited with the amount of 136. Suspense account will be debited with the amount of 136. Is it? Now, what should have been the other entry? Please, anyone. What should have been recorded for the other half? Anyone can please answer me. Suspense account has been removed from your books of accounts. It's been debited with the amount of 136. Now, what should have been the other half? Yes, very good. Okay. Remember, the fuel expense should have been debited with the amount of 68, but you have debited the fuel expense with the amount of 136. It means you have recorded the expense. You have over-recorded the expense. We need to reduce the amount of expense. With the amount of 136, not at all. With the amount of 68. Another error is there. And what is that? You have to record the creditors. You need to record that liability or the accounts payable on the credit side, but you didn't record it. which means now you have to record the creditors or the accounts payable on the credit side with the amount of 68. So this is gonna to be the correct entry for this error. Yes, Shankar, absolutely right. That is payable. So the correct answer for this one, is yes, Tamur, you're right, absolutely right. That is the option C. Suspense account will be debited by 136, fuel expense will be credited by 68, and payables or the creditors will be credited by 68. This was the very good question. No doubt a difficult one. Okay, now let's move on to question number 8. The company's markup of goods by 30%. And we all know that markup means it's a profit percentage, and profit percentage is on markup. Markup means it's calculated on cost. We all know that. Markup means the profit is calculated on the basis of cost. Very good, Shankar. During the year end date, he purchased goods for $20,000. That is the amount of purchases. And increase his inventory holding by $5,000. So what we have to do, we need to calculate the gross profit for this one. Okay, in order to calculate the gross profit, the basic formula is you need net sales minus cost of goods sold, that is cost. Is it? But no value for the sales has been given in this question. No value for the sales is given in the question. We need to calculate this one. Surprisingly, we don't have a cost of goods sold even. We don't have the cost of goods sold. So can we calculate the cost of goods sold? Yes, we can calculate. We can calculate the amount of cost of goods sold. How are we going to calculate the cost of goods sold? The simple formula is cost of goods sold. We have three main components. That is the merchandise opening plus in add, that is net purchases, and minus merchandise ending. There are three main components in the cost of goods sold. That is opening, net purchases, ending. There are three main components in the cost of goods sold. That is opening, net purchases, ending. Okay, let's read out the data. What's given in the question? We can easily find out the purchases. The value of purchases already given in the question. So the purchase is amounting to $20,000, is it? But we cannot find out the opening and ending. But yes, there is a statement given in the question, that is increase his inventory holding by $5,000. So what is that increase or decrease? It's a difference of opening and merchandise ending. That during the year inventory was increased. It means it's a difference of what? It's a difference of what? Opening and ending. Very good, Shankar. Very good, Tamur, Sujal. Let me calculate this one. Okay. So it's a difference of what? Opening and ending. It's a difference of what? Opening and ending. Let me rephrase this equation. Cost of goods sold is equal to merchandise opening minus merchandise ending plus net profit. Is it? Yes. It's the difference of what? Increase or decrease in the inventory is basically the difference of opening and ending inventory. So which means if you're going to calculate the cost of goods sold, merchandise opening and ending, the difference between these two, is $5,000, and definitely the negative sign of the merchandise ending would be there. And the net purchases is $20,000. So minus $5,000 plus $20,000. So cost of goods sold should have been $15,000 with the positive sign. So we have calculated the cost of goods sold, and we all know that once we have calculated the cost of goods sold, it is quite easy to calculate the amount of sale. It's not that difficult one now. We know that there is a profit markup. Let's calculate the ratio. What usually I do, that I just make a ratio of it. That is 30% is the profit ratio. And if it is on markup, the cost would be 100 as the cost is base, and the sales ratio would be 130. So 15,000 multiplied by required. That is the required is sales, which means multiply by 130 and divided by given, that is the cost, and the ratio for the cost is 100. So the amount of sales should have been 15,000 multiplied by 130. 15,000 multiplied by 130 divided by 100. So the amount of sales is 19,500. 19,500 is the sales and the cost of goods sold is 15,000, which means the difference between these two would give you the resultant, that is the 4,500, and 4,500 is the amount of gross profit. Very good, Sujal. So 4,500 would be the correct answer for this one. Okay, let's move on towards the next question. There are three statements. Basically, there are three errors. Number one, two, and the third one, in which you have to identify that which of the error would affect the trial balance and which will not affect the trial balance. Please read the statement and give me the answer for this one. Read the statement and give me the answer for this one. Yes, read the statement and give me the answer for this one. Yes. Very good. Great. Okay, first statement. Very good. A transposition error where $124 has been debited to the purchases and 142 has been credited to the trade payables. Okay, what it says that $124 has been debited to the purchases, which means the debit entry has been recorded as purchases debit with the amount of 124. And $142 has been credited as payable, which means account payable is being credited with the amount of 142. Whether the debit and credit side both are equal? No, it's not equal, which means if the debit and credit side is not equal, this will give rise to the difference, and definitely this can be identified in the trial balance. So yes, this error can be identified by extracting a trial balance, and then once it will be identified, we'll open a suspense account, that is the temporary account. Okay, another statement, that is the depreciation. Depreciation on motor vehicle has been incorrectly calculated using the 20% instead of 25% reducing balance method. What if the incorrect percentage is being applied? Remember, the entry should have been recorded for this one. That is the depreciation expense debit and accumulated depreciation credit. Whether you apply 20% or the 25%, there will be a no change on the accounting entry for the depreciation, which means this error, yes, no doubt, it's an error, but this is not going to affect your trial balance, and this error cannot be identified through the trial balance. Third statement, the journal to write off an irrecoverable debt has not been posted. Irrecoverable debt, that is write off, is being not recorded. Bad expense debit, accounts receivable recorded is completely omitted from the books of accounts. Will this error affect the trial balance? Not at all. Reason being, and remember, whenever I say that this error will not affect the trial balance, which means the debit and credit would remain same, as no accounts or neither the debit nor the credit is being recorded, which means that error cannot be identified by extracting the trial balance. Is it clear to everyone? Yes. Is it clear to everyone? Okay, great. Okay, let's move on towards another question. Which one of the following statement is correct? Which one of the following statement is correct? Try to identify the correct answer. Which of the following statement is correct? Sorry, this is the incorrect. Yes, which statement is correct? Okay, Shankar. Anyone else? Okay, Tamur. Let's read out. First, read out the statement A. A trial balance can only be extracted at the end of the accounting period. Remember, yes, normally, what I said, yes, normally the trial balances are prepared at the end of the accounting period, but it's not necessary. Most of the companies do prepare their half year accounts. They prepare their half year financial statements. They prepare the quarterly financial statement. And whenever you wanted to prepare the financial statement, there's a need to prepare the trial balance, which means yes, normally the trial balances are prepared at the end of the accounting period. But if we are saying that trial balance can only be extracted at the end of the accounting period, it's a false statement. It's a false statement. Trial balance cannot or are not required only to be extracted at the end of the accounting period. It could be prepared in the mid-year accounts as well. So statement A is incorrect. Statement A is incorrect. Okay, another option. Let's try to evaluate the D statement. Okay, let's try to evaluate the D statement. Financial statement can be prepared directly from the trial balance. It's a wrong statement. Financial statement cannot be prepared directly from the trial balance. Don't forget the accounting process. First, we are going to prepare the journal. Let's say book of prime entries. Further, the transaction will be posted to the T account. Further, it will be posted to the trial balance. And after preparing the trial balance, there will be another procedure, that is to make the adjusting entries, which means directly on the basis of the trial balance, the financial statement cannot be prepared. There is another step, that is to prepare the adjusting entries, and furthermore the trial balance will be adjusted, and then we can prepare the financial statement. So option D is the correct answer, Sana. We need to identify the correct statement. A and D both are incorrect statements. Okay, now let's move on towards the option B. Let's move on towards the option B. A trial balance does not prove that all transactions have been recorded. Shankar, we will also discuss the option C. But remember what it says. A trial balance does not prove that all transactions have been recorded. A trial balance does not prove. If we are preparing the trial balance, it states that it does not prove, it's not a proof, it's not an evidence that all transactions have been recorded. Yes, it's a true statement, it's a correct statement. If you have prepared the trial balance, you cannot guarantee someone that all the transactions have been recorded. There could be a complete omission. There are the chances of the complete omission. If, for example, if the invoice of a sales invoice has not yet been recorded, the complete accounting entry has been omitted, which means the trial balance is equal, but you cannot assure it. You cannot give the affirmation for this one that yes, all the transactions are posted. No, it's not the case. Although you have prepared the trial balance, although the debit and the credit side is equal, but still there is a possibility, there is a chance that some transactions have not yet been recorded. There could be a complete omission. It's a correct statement. So why not C? Okay, let's see. Why not C? Why not C? A trial balance proves the arithmetic accuracy. Yes, it's a perfect statement. I agree with you. I second you. But what it says, a trial balance proves the arithmetic accuracy of the ledger accounts. No. Always remember, a trial balance proves the double entry bookkeeping, that all entries are made with the double entry concept. All entries are made with the double entry concepts. It means every debit has an equal credit. It shows the accuracy in the double entry bookkeeping, not the accuracy in the arithmetics. It shows the accuracy in the double entry bookkeeping, which means that all entries have been recorded by following the double entry bookkeeping concept. So if the statement is written on the question that a trial balance proves the accuracy of double entry bookkeeping, yes, this should have been the correct answer. But right now, arithmetic accuracy, it's not the case. So the correct answer for this question is B. The trial balance does not prove. It means if you are preparing the trial balance, you cannot give the guarantee, you cannot give the absolute assurance that all transactions have been recorded. There could be an error of complete omission. Okay, another question, and that is extracted from the ICAP study text. That has been extracted from the ICAP past paper and the study text. Try to solve this one. Every student is requested to please try this question. Amna wrongly credited the return inward of rupees 3,500 to return outward, although the receivable account was correctly credited. What will be the difference in the trial balance prepared at the year end? Which means after making an error, yes, what should be the answer for this one? Okay, great. Nice. Okay. Let's try to make an entry for this one. Amna wrongly credited return inward of rupees 3,500. It means the original entry should have been made for the return inward, that is says return debit and account receivable should have been credited with the amount of 3,500. What actually happened? That is Amna wrongly credited return inward of rupees 3,500 to return outward, which means instead of debiting the sales return, Amna credited the return outward, which means the purchase return account was credited with the amount of 3,500. Furthermore, although the receivable account was correctly credited, it means we were about to credit the account receivable, and yes, account receivable was also credited with the amount of 3,500. Now, if you just look at this entry, that is the error. Purchase return and account receivables, both the accounts are credited, which means there is nothing on the debit side. So how the trial balance would result out that the credit side total will be 7,000 and the debit side total will be 0, which means the credit side would be more than the debit side by 7,000 rupees. So what would be the correct answer for this one? Yes, absolutely. Yes, no doubt, Shankar, the suspense account will be opened on the debit side with the amount of 7,000. Yes, you are right. But for the timing, we are not here. In this particular requirement, we are not supposed to calculate or to prepare the correct entry. We just need to identify that what would be the impact on the trial balance. The total of the trial balance on the credit side will be 7,000 more than the total of the debit side. Absolutely right. Perfect. Okay, another question. And it's a very good question. Correct amount of profit is required. Please try to solve this one. Yes, try to solve this one. Okay, Sujal, great. Anyone else? Okay, let's try to solve this one. Okay. For the year ended 31st December 2018, Ahmed showed a profit of $15,000, 15,500 rupees. It was further discovered that during the year he purchased a piece of equipment for 5,000 rupees. Transactions was recorded as a debit repair expense account and credited the cash account. Which means the profit, the net profit that is already given in the question, it's an incorrect profit, or we can say that it's an unadjusted profit with the amount of 15,500. Now, during the year, there was a purchase of equipment for 5,000 rupees. The transaction has been recorded as a repair expense account and cash was credited. Repair expense account was debited and cash account is credited. It is the policy to depreciate the equipment at a 10% charging full year depreciation in the year of purchase. Okay, full year policy is being used by the company. What is the impact of correcting the errors? That once you will rectify the error, what will be the impact on the profit or loss? Okay, first of all, instead of debiting the machine account, is it? Which means the original entry should have been machine debit and cash credit with the amount of $5,000. This should have been recorded. But what accountant did? Accountant recognized the repair expense account and credited the cash account with the 5,000 rupees. With the 5,000 rupees. Which means accountant recorded it as an expense and increased the expense. And if the expense is increased, definitely this would have been a result in the decrease in profit, is it? So in order to rectify, in order to correct this error, definitely we need to increase the profit. We need to increase the profit with the amount of 5,000 rupees. We need to increase the profit with the amount of 5,000 rupees. As already the expense has been overstated, because of which the profit is reduced. Now, in order to rectify this one, we need to increase the profit. But one more thing, if no asset is being recorded, which means no entry for the depreciation is being recorded, which means no entry for the depreciation expense is being recorded. So, in order to rectify the complete error, we need to recognize the depreciation, and the rate of depreciation is 10%, which means the depreciation amount to 500 should have been recorded as depreciation expense debit and accumulated depreciation credit, which means the depreciation expense will be recorded, it's an expense and will reduce the amount of profit. So the profit will be reduced by 500. Now, what's the requirement? That the profit will be increased by, you're not supposed to calculate the correct amount of profit. Yes, we can do it. We can do it, that what will be the adjusted profit, but here we need to give the amount or the answer related to the amount of adjustment, that from which amount the adjustment will be made. So summing up, or just have a net of this amount, that is 4,500, and this 4,500 will increase the amount of profit. So the profit will be increased by 4,500. Option C is the correct answer. Is it clear to everyone? Yes, everyone, please. Okay, great. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Which of the following errors will require creating a suspense account? Always remember, suspense account will be opened when there is an imbalance in the debit and credit. Whenever there is an imbalance in the debit and credit, the suspense account will be opened. Option A. Let's try to evaluate this one. Repair expense considered as a purchase of asset. Repair expense was considered as a purchase of asset. So it means the original entry should have been repair expense debit and cash should have been credited. Instead of what accountant did, he debited the asset account and credited the cash account, which means the debit and credit side both are equal. So no suspense account will be maintained for this one. Second option. So first option is cancelled out. Purchase of inventory was considered as a purchase of non-current asset, which means the original entry should have been purchases debit and accounts payable should have been credited. Instead, accountant debited the machine account and credited the accounts payable. So again, this entry, the debit side and the credit side of the entry is equal. So no suspense account should be maintained. C, option C. An invoice of 2,500 was totally omitted from the books. It means no entry has been recorded. No entry has been recorded, which means it's a complete omission and no suspense account will be maintained for this error as well. Let's find out the D1. Petty cash expense of 500 were only credited to the bank account. It means we were having a reimbursement or the replenishment in the petty cash fund. It was only credited to the bank account, which means the debit side is not yet being recorded. The petty cash expense were only credited to the bank account. Bank account is being credited, but no debit has been recorded, which means this will give rise to the suspense account. This will give rise to the suspense account. Yes, Sujal, you are absolutely right. Option D is the correct answer. Okay, another question. Zahid granted an early settlement discount of 1,500 to one of its customers. The discount amount was correctly entered in the receivable account, but it was wrongly credited to the revenue account. The sales to this customer were originally recorded at gross amount, and Zahid does not maintain the separate discount allowed account. Okay, let's try to first of all understand this particular question. Okay, let's try to understand this one. First of all, there is a transaction for sales discount. It means the discount, the settlement discount of 1,500 to one of its customer, the discount amount was correctly in the receivable account. It means the accounting entry should have been sales discount debit and account receivable should have been credited with the amount of 1,500. But it was wrongly credited to the revenue account. Okay, the discount amount was correctly entered in the receivable, which means account receivable was properly and accurately credited with the amount of 1,500. But what actually happened? The revenue account was also credited with the amount of 1,500. The revenue account is also credited with the amount of 1,500. Now, one statement that is given in the question, that is the sales to this customer were originally recorded as the gross amount. What does it mean? You all know that there's a latest treatment given by the IES or IFRS that whenever you feel that customer will avail the discount, you should record the sales on the net amount. Remember this one. If you know that your desired customer will avail the cash discount, so don't wait for the payment, recognize the sales on the net amount or the discounted amount, which means the account receivable debit and sales will be credited on the net amount, which means after deducting the sales discount. But here the examiner is saying that the entry is recorded on the gross amount, which means the accountant initially didn't recognize the discount neither he recorded the discount, so the entry was recorded. The sales entry was recorded on the gross price as if no discount was available. Okay. Now, Zaid does not maintain the separate discount allowed account. It means anything that would be adjusted will be adjusted in the sales account. But for the timing, two credits are recorded, but nothing is recorded on the debit side. Obviously speaking, the suspense account will be recorded on the debit side with the amount of $3,000 or 3,000 rupees. Now, how we gonna to rectify this one? So, what's the requirement of this question? In order to balance the trial balance at the year end, what should be the balance on the suspense account and the trial balance? Which means we're not supposed to correct this accounting entry. We are just required to give the balance on the suspense account due to errors. So what would be the balance on the suspense account? Suspense account will have a balance of $3,000, and definitely it is open on the shorter side, and the shorter side is debit one, which means the suspense account will show the debit balance of 3,000. Debit balance of 3,000. So option B is the correct answer for this one. But let's, for the learning perspective, what should have been the correct accounting treatment for this one? What should have been the correct accounting treatment for this one? Let's try to do this one. Let's try to do this one. If we are going to calculate or to correct this entry, first of all, we need to remove the suspense account from the books. That is, to remove the suspense account from the books, we need to credit the suspense account. And let's try to compare the entry. Sales discount should have been debited with the amount of 1,500. It means the sales should have been reduced with the amount of 1,500. And account receivable should have been credited with the amount of 1,500. No doubt there is no problem in the account receivable ledger, but yes, instead of debiting the sales account, remember the sales or the revenue is being credited. And remember, whenever the accounts are oppositely posted, remember the adjustment or the correction will be done with the double amount. It means now the sales or the revenue account will be debited with the amount of 3,000. So the correct entry would have been sales or the revenue account will be debited and the suspense account will be credited with the amount of 3,000. Okay, the suspense account shows the debit balance of 500. Which of the following could be the cause of the reason? Again, the examiner is asking you that you need to show the option that is because of which the suspense account has a debit balance that is due to errors. It's not after rectifying the error, it is due to error. Which of the following error would cause a debit balance in the suspense account? Overstatement of a salary expense by 500. Overstatement of the salaries expense by 500. Okay, let's try to recognize the entry for this one. So accounting entry should have been salary expense debit and cash credit. If the salary expense has been overstated by 500, which means let's assume the original amount should have been, let's say, 1,000. Original amount is 1,000, and if the salary expense is overstated by 500, it means salaries expense are debited by 1,500, although the cash is properly and appropriately recorded by 1,000, which means this will give rise to the suspense account, but this will give rise to the suspense account on the credit side. This will give rise to the suspense account on the credit side. This will show the credit balance. This will show the credit balance, although we require a debit balance on the suspense account. So option A is incorrect. Option B, overstating the sales account. Account receivable debit and sales credit. Let's assume the sales amounting to 1,000. What it says that sales account has been overstated by 500, which means sales is recorded by 1,500 while the account receivable is being recorded by 1,000, which means again there is a difference, and no doubt the suspense account will be opened on the debit side with the amount of 500. And now, yes, this will represent the debit balance. So because of this error, the suspense account will show the debit balance of 500. Is it clear to everyone? Please Notify me through a chat box. Okay, great. Okay, there is another question, and it's a good question. Again, the adjusted profit is calculated in that particular question. Draft income statement of enterprises for the year ended 31st December 2017 shows the gross profit of 8,50,000 and the net profit of 4,60,000. It was subsequently discovered that the purchase return amounted to 6,700 has been recorded as sales return, which means purchase return is a revenue nature. Purchase return is a revenue nature. We can say that the revenue is recorded as an expense. And remember, both of these accounts will be adjusted in the calculation of gross profit. We all know that in order to calculate the gross profit, there is a net sales minus cost of goods sold, and sales return will be included in the net sales. It will be the part of your net sales. Further, purchase return will be recorded in the cost of goods sold and will be deducted from the amount of purchases. So both are going to affect the gross profit primarily. Okay, so gross profit that is given in the question, that is 8,50,000, and the net profit that is already given in the question, that is 4,60,000. Okay, first of all, purchase return means revenue of 6,700 was recorded as an expense, which means you have increased the expense, which means your gross profit is understated. Now you have to increase the gross profit. You have to increase the gross profit. For that, first of all, you need to reverse back the sales return, and once you will revert it back 6,700, the profit will increase. More or less, now you have to recognize the purchase return as well. That is the revenue. So again, the profit will be increased by 6,700. We can say that whenever the accounts are oppositely posted or wrongly posted, the impact will be, or the adjustment or the corrections will be done with the double amount. So it means 6,700 will be added back. Now, what would be the adjusted gross profit? This will arise 863,400. That is the adjusted net profit. Sorry, adjusted gross profit. Now we need to calculate the adjusted net profit as well. Adjusted net profit, in order to calculate the adjusted net profit, obviously there is an increase in the gross profit, and obviously speaking, there will be a direct increase in the net profit as well. If the gross profit is increased by 13,400, obviously the net profit will also be increased by 13,400, which will result in the adjusted net profit of 473,400. So that is the adjusted net profit, and 863,400 is the adjusted gross profit. So option, if we just try to find out the option, the correct option for this one. So the adjusted gross profit 863,400 and 473,400 adjusted net profit. Option B is the correct answer. Okay, that is another question. Okay, Shankar, let me recall again. Let me recall this one again. Gross profit is 8,50,000, and company recorded the sales return instead of the purchase return, which means the company has recorded the expense account. If the company has recorded the expense account, definitely this would have resulted in the reduction in the gross profit. So we are going to increase the gross profit. Always remember, whenever the accounts are posted on the wrong side or the opposite side, which means we need to have a debit entry, but instead you credited that account, which means now the adjustment will be made with the double amount. First of all, we will remove the sales return. In order to remove the sales return, we will reduce the sales return amount and expense will be reduced, and obviously there will be an increase in profit. There will be an increase in profit, which means sales return will, that reversal of the sales return will increase the gross profit. Secondly, you were supposed to recognize the purchase return, but you forgot. So now you have to recognize the purchase return as well. And purchase return is a revenue nature. So obviously, this will increase the amount of profit or the gross profit. Is it clear, Shankar? Yes, great. The cash sales made of 400,000 and posted as sales debit and cash credit. We can clearly see that the sales entry should have been cash debit and sales credit. But what accountant did, sales debit and cash credit, that is the best example for error of reversal. Error of reversal. It's a complete error. It's a complete reversal. Now, what should be the accounting entry for this one? What should be the accounting entry for this one? Good, Sujal. This entry should have been made with the amount of 400,000. But what accountant did? What accountant did? Sales debit and cash credit with the amount of 400,000. In order to rectify this one, we need to reverse back this entry, cash debit and sales credit, but obviously with the double amount. Yes, with the double amount. What is the logic behind it? I just told you earlier. There are two errors basically. Number one, that sales should have been credited. But what accountant did? What accountant did? Sales were debited by 400,000, which means you need to increase the revenue. But what you did, you reduced the revenue. So now, in order to increase the revenue will be increased by the double amount. Yes, exactly, Tamur, Shankar, very good. So what is going to be the correct answer for this one? What is going to be the correct answer for this one? Option D, yes. Very good. Okay, another question. The company's trial balance failed to agree the total being. The debit side total is 150, 300, sorry, 950, 300, and the credit side total is 955, 300, which means the credit side is heavier, which means the credit side is heavier. If the credit side is heavier and debit side is shorter, obviously the difference will be posted to the suspense account, and the difference is 5,300, is it? Or 4,700? That is 5,000. The difference is 5,000. Now the suspense account will be opened with the amount of 5,000, and definitely it will have a credit balance. It will have a debit balance, sorry, as if the debit side is shorter. So now this will be known as what? The debit balance by 5,000. Okay. Now, which of the following is the reason for this difference? Again, correction is not required. Only you need to identify because of this error which statement is correct. Utilities expense of $5,000 entirely omitted from the recording. Always remember, if there is an entirely omission, which means neither the debit nor the credit has been recorded, because of which there could never be an imbalance in the trial balance. So this option is ridiculous. This option is invalid. Transportation of $5,000 is recorded as transportation out. Always remember, whether you talk about transportation in or transportation out, both are the expense. Both are expenses. Both are the expenses. So whether you record transportation in or transportation out, yes, no doubt, the entry is incorrect, but this will not affect the trial balance. This will never give rise to the suspense account. Purchase return of 2,500 debited in error to the sales return account. while transaction was correctly posted to the party's account. Purchase return of 2,500 debited in error to the sales account. It means accounting entry should have been made. Account payable debit and purchase return credit with the amount of 2,500. What actually the accountant did, debited in the error to the sales return account, which means the sales return account is debited with the amount of 2,500 while transactions were correctly posted to the party's account, which means account payable is properly recorded. Now let's evaluate the scenario. Now the debit side is debited by 5,000 and there is nothing on the credit side, which means credit side is shorter, and by this there will be a credit balance. There will be a credit balance, which means the suspense account will be open on the credit side. But here the suspense account is open on the debit side. So this is not the correct option or the correct answer for this one. Let's move on to option C. Purchase return of 2,500. Sorry, option D. Let's move on towards option D. Sales return of 2,500. It means the accounting entry should have been for the sales return debit and account receivable credit with the amount of 2,500. Was wrongly recorded as purchase return while transaction was correctly posted to the partners or the party's account. While the transaction has been posted correctly to the party's account, which means purchase return is credited and account receivable is also credited. Now obviously the balancing figure on the debit side is 5,000 and suspense account is debited with the 5,000, which means because of this error the suspense account will have a debit balance. The suspense account will have a debit balance of 5,000, and yes, that is the correct answer for this MCQ. Is it clear to everyone? A trial balance of a business did not agree and a suspense account was created. On investigation, it was revealed that the revealed that the posting payments from the bank book insurance expense was posted as 2,54,000 instead of 2,45,000, which means there was an expense for the insurance, and the accounting entry for this one should have been insurance expense. Insurance expense should have been debited and bank or cash should have been credited with the amount of 2,45,000, as 2,45,000 is the original amount. 2,45,000 insurance expense debit and bank will be credited. Now what accountant did? Accountant basically recorded the insurance expense with the amount of 2,54,000, and obviously there is no error on the cash or the bank side, so cash or bank is credited with the 2,45,000. Now again there is an imbalance in the accounting entry, so the suspense account will be maintained with the amount of 9,000 and this will be recognized as a suspense account. Now what is the correct entry for this one? In order to correct the entry, first of all we need to remove or eliminate the suspense account. Suspense account will be debited by 9,000. And is there any error in the cash account? No, cash and bank is perfect. So salaries expense is overstated. Now expense is overstated, we need to decrease the expense by 9,000. So the accounting entry would be suspense account debit and insurance expense credit. Suspense account debit and insurance expense credit with the amount of 9,000, and obviously option A is the correct answer. Very good, Tamur. Very good, Tamur. Yes, Tamur. You wanted to ask something? Just few questions are left. Okay, let's move on towards the question number 31. A suspense account was opened when the trial balance failed to agree. The following errors were discovered afterwards. Now, what is the requirement for this question? That is, at what amount the suspense account should be maintained or shown in the trial balance in order to make the trial balance agree, which means we need to show the balance on the suspense account because of error, or we can say that due to errors. Due to errors. Okay, let's try to solve this one. Number one, an electricity bills of $620, 620 rupees had been recorded in the electricity charges account as 250 rupees, which means the original entry should have been electricity expense debit and cash credit. And the original amount was 620. It means the complete entry should have been made with the amount of 620. But what actually the accountant did, it was recorded in the electricity expense account as 250. And obviously there is no error in the cash side, so cash is credited with the amount of 620. Obviously, if the entry is not equal, there is a difference in the debit and the credit side. So 620 minus 250, 370. This will result in the 370. This will result in the suspense account, and this will be opened or recorded on the debit side, which means because of this error there will be a debit balance of the suspense account. Again, second transaction, a discount allowed 200 was wrongly credited to the revenue account. It means the entry should have been for the sales discount debit and account receivable credit with the amount of 200. With the amount of 200. That is the original entry. Now, how the transaction was recorded? Was credited to the revenue account, which means sales discount was not debited, account receivable is appropriately recorded, and sales account, revenue account is credited. Revenue account is credited with the amount of 200. Now, there is nothing on the debit side. Obviously, the suspense account will be opened with the amount of 400. So for the first error, there is a suspense account debit balance. And again, for the second error, there is a debit balance on the suspense account. Okay, let's read out the third statement. Third statement, interest given by bank 450 was debited to the bank account only. Interest given by the bank were only debited to the bank account. Accounting entry should have been bank debit with the amount of 450. And income or the interest income or the profit will be credited with the amount of 450. Now, what accountant did actually? What accountant did? What accountant did? Interest given by bank 450 was debited to the bank account only. Only bank was debited and there was no credit entry. And if there is no credit entry, which means this will give rise to the suspense account with the amount of 450. So in aggregate, we have three different suspense account. The first and the second one is having the debit balance, and the third one is the credit balance. Let's prepare the suspense account or the T account to clearly identify the balance on the suspense account. Because of the error 1, we were having a debit balance of 370. Because of the error 2, we were having a debit balance of 400 and the credit balance of 450 because of the error 3. So let's try to calculate the balance on the suspense account. So the debit side is heavier and the balance on the suspense account is $320. And if the debit side is heavier, obviously speaking, this will be turned as the debit balance of 320. Debit balance of the 320. Very good, Taimur. Okay, another question that is in the same way, same pattern. The trial balance was extracted from the Nizam. It was found that debit exceeds the credit side. Following errors were identified. What was the balance on the suspense account before correction of errors? Again, same question with the same debt, with the different data, but with the same ideology. Now, the first error, the purchase account was overcasted. Let me do and try directly. Okay. The purchase account was overcasted by 1,20,000. It means purchase account was overcasted, which means the debit side is overstated. And if the debit side is overstated, obviously the credit side would be shorter. So in that particular case, there will be a credit balance on the suspense account with the amount of 1,20,000. Second, an amount paid to Sajjad was debited to his account as 98,000 instead of 89,000. It means account payable should have been debited with the amount of 89, but he debited with the higher amount. He debited with the higher amount, which means the debit side is higher. Obviously, the credit side is shorter. So if the credit side is shorter, the balance will be, or the suspense account will be opened on the credit side with the amount of 9,000. Again, 9,000 is having a credit balance. Third statement, a sales account was undercosted. It means sales account is undercosted, which means sales account is undercosted. Obviously, if the sales account is undercosted, which means the credit side is lower, and if credit side is lower, the suspense account will again be opened on the credit side. Now let's try to calculate the balance on the suspense account. The balance on the suspense account is 1,40,000 and credit side is heavier. This will show the credit balance. This will show the credit balance. So 1,40,000 credit balance is the correct answer. Okay, another question. A cash refund of 20,000 due to customer A. A cash refund of 20,000 due to customer A. Cash refund to customer. Sometimes the customer pays you more than it is demanded. For example, for instance, if the customer has paid you more amount than it was invoiced earlier, which means the customer has paid you the higher amount or the more amount or the excess amount in error. So obviously speaking, there are two possible ways, either that you deliver the goods to him or you repay that amount or you give them a refund. So if a cash refund is given, so what accounting entry is made for the cash refund? The original entry for the cash refund is account receivable is debited and cash is credited. So this should be the entry, should have been recorded in the books of accounts. Was correctly treated in the cash book. It says that it was correctly recorded in the cash book, which means the cash should have been credited, and yes, accountant did so. And then credited to the receivable ledger, which means instead of debiting the account receivable, accountant credited the account receivable. Now, if there are two credit and there is no debit, so suspense account will be opened on the debit side of the account or the entry that is with the amount of 40,000. Now, what is the requirement? At what amount the suspense account should be shown in the trial balance to make the trial balance agree, which means again it's asking for the balance on the suspense account due to errors, because of the errors. So this will give rise to the suspense account on the debit side, and obviously there will be a debit balance on the suspense account of 40,000 rupees in the trial balance. Is it clear to everyone? Yes, Sujal, very good, excellent. You made and you gave a perfect answer and the correct answer. Okay, another question. Goods of rupees 100,000 purchased from a Abbas trader were recorded in the sales book. The reclassification of this error will, because of this error, what will be the impact on the gross profit? Because of this error, what will be the impact on the gross profit? Purchases of 1,000 was recorded as the sales. In short, we can say that the expense was recorded as revenue. Expenses was recorded as a revenue. Because of this error, what will be the impact on the profit? Because of this error, what will be the impact on the profits? Okay, there are two questions again. Because of this error, what will be the impact on this profit? Because of this error, definitely the profit will be overstated. The profit will be increased. But read the question very properly. Read the question very properly. What is written over there? That the rectification means what? The correction. The rectification of this error will, once the error is rectified, will reduce the gross profit. Is it clear to everyone? Please do read the question very attentively. No doubt, Tamur. Because of this error, the profit will be increased. The profit is overstated. I agree this one. But because of this rectification, once the error is rectified, now the profit will be reduced. Is it clear? So option B is the correct answer. Very good, Tamur. Okay, let's have a question for this one. What would be the total of the trial balance if a purchase return of 84,000 has been wrongly posted to the debit of the sales return account but had been correctly entered in the supplier's account? Which means, first of all, we need to identify the actual or the correct entry. What should have been the original entry? The original entry is for the purchase return. That is account payable debit, and purchase return should have been credited with the amount of 84,000. Now, what went wrong? Debited to the sales return account. It means now the sales return is being debited with the 84,000, and there is no error in the supplier's account, which means the supplier account is being correctly recorded or debited with the amount of 84,000. This will definitely give rise to the suspense account, no doubt. But here we are not supposed to answer the balance on the suspense account. Now, what would be the impact on the trial balance? The debit side of the trial balance will be 1,68,000, and there will be nothing on the credit side, which means the debit side is more than the credit side. The debit side is higher than the credit side with the amount of 1,68,000, and the correct option for this one would be the debit side to be 1,68,000 more than the credit side. Is it clear to everyone? Please notify me through a chat box. Is it clear to everyone? Okay, we can have another question for this one. Another question. Which one of the following errors should be detected by extracting the trial balance? At the start of this lecture, at the start of this webinar, we discussed this one, that there are certain errors that could affect the trial balance, and there are certain errors that could not affect the trial balance. Please try to identify this one. I need your answers. Which of the following errors would affect the trial balance? Yes, it's option D. The transposition error. Transposition error would affect the trial balance, and this can be deducted. This can be deducted, or this can be detected from the trial balance. This can be detected from the trial balance. Otherwise, error of omission means a complete omission. If the entry is completely omitted, this cannot be detected from the trial balance. Error of principal, instead of recognizing the machine, you have recognizing the expense account. This cannot be deducted. Error of original entry means error of compensating. If the debit and credit both are recorded with the incorrect amount, will not be extracted or will not be detected from the trial balance. Shankar, we are just about to end this one. We are on the last phases. Okay. Another question that is again related to the types of error. We are just on the ending notes. Please try to solve this one. Tisha has a very little accounting knowledge. When she recorded the repair of her shop furniture and fittings, she added the cost to the non-current asset balance in the statement of financial position. It means the repair expense account was recorded as a non-current asset account. So this error will be known as, yes, this error will be known as what? The error of principal. If the heads of accounts are changed, it means that error is known as what? The error of principal. When company has a draft financial statement shows a profit of $28,640. Following the year-ended reconciliation and review process, the following errors were discovered. What you have to do, that is to calculate the revised and the updated profit. First of all, the unadjusted profit that is given in the question. The unadjusted profit that is given in the question. Unadjusted profit that is given in the question, that is 28,640. The first error, credit sales of $2,000 had been omitted from the sales ledger, which means sales has not yet been recorded. If the sales is not recorded, revenue is not recorded, revenue is understated, obviously the profit is understated. So we need to increase the amount of profit. We need to increase the amount of profit. So we are going to recognize the sales, and once we will recognize the sales, the profit, we need to increase the profit in order to adjust that profit. Telephone invoice of 120 has been recorded as 210. It means the expense was $120 and it was recorded as 210. It means expense is overstated. If the expense is overstated, it means the profit is reduced. Now we need to increase the amount of profit with the difference amount, and the difference will be a $90. It means telephone expense was overstated. Now we need to increase the amount of profit. The installation cost of 3,200 for a new machinery have been recorded as an expense, which means capital expenditure should have been recorded, but you record it as a revenue expenditure. And in order to reverse that one, you need to reduce the expense. And once you will reduce the expense, definitely the profit will be revenue profit will be increased by 3,200. So ultimately the adjusted net profit should have been the adjusted net profit should have been please calculate the amount. Yes, it's 33930. It's 33930. Remember the last one, the installation cost of 3,200. It should have been capitalized. It should have been the part of non-current asset. But instead, the accountant recorded as an expense, which means you have overstated the expense. And if you have overstated the expense, this will reduce the amount of profit. Now you have to revert it back. For that, we will increase the amount of profit by 3,200. So the adjusted net profit will be 33,930. Okay, one more question. A company has a suspense account balance and the trial balance is $560. So far, what we were doing, we were calculating the balance on the suspense account due to errors. But in this particular question, we are going to calculate the balance on the suspense account after rectification. That what will be the remaining balance on this suspense account. So the balance on the suspense account is already given. That is the credit balance of 560. It was discovered that a discount allowed of $700 have been debited to instead of credited to the trade receivable account. Which means the original entry should have been for the sales discount. Discount allowed, sales discount debit, and account receivable should have been credited with the amount of 700. Now, what went wrong? It was discovered that the discount allowed of 700, it was the transaction of sales discount, have been debited to, it means the accountant has debited something instead of credited to. It means there is something that should have been credited, but accountant did what accountant did. Accountant debited that account, that is the trade receivable, which means account receivable has been debited by 700 and there is no error in the sales discount, which means sales discount is also debited by 700 and this will give rise to the suspense account by 1400 on the credit side. But remember, in this particular question, we need to correct this error. We need to calculate the remaining balance on the suspense account. For this, we need to calculate or prepare the correcting entry. In order to correct this entry, suspense account will be debited by 1400 and sales discount will be credited by account receivable will be credited by 1400. As if account receivable should have been credited. Instead, what accountant did? Accountant debited the account receivable account. Now the account receivable will be credited with the double amount. So suspense account debit and account receivable will be credited. So suspense account debit. Now let's calculate or find out the closing balance for the suspense account. And obviously the closing balance will arise on the credit side and 840. Yes, 840. But this will be known as the 840 debit balance. Please remember, as the debit side is heavier. So we will say that the balance on the suspense account is 840, a debit balance. 840, a debit balance. No, Taimur. C is not the correct one. How can you calculate 1260 credit balance? You have to look out, you have to search, you have to look out the correcting entry rather than posting the error. Because in this question, after this error has been adjusted, we need to calculate the balance on the suspense account after correction of errors. Which means we will be posting the entries, that the correcting entries into the suspense account. Is it clear to you, Taimur? Okay, last question. Last question for this one. As at 31st December, company's trial balance failed to balance the suspense account was opened. When the following errors were discovered, and then rectified, the suspense account was eliminated. What was the original balance on the suspense account? It means again, we need to identify the balance on the suspense account due to errors, because of the errors. Let's try to identify. Number one, the debit side of the trial balance was understated. It means if the debit side of the trial balance is understated, debit side is shorter, the suspense account will be opened on the debit side. So because of this error, there will be a debit balance of 692. Second, a payment of $905 has been credited in the cash ledger, but no entry made in respect but no other entry in respect had been made, which means the credit side is recorded but no entry is made on the debit side. Again, the debit side is shorter. Again, the debit side is shorter, and if the debit side is shorter, obviously suspense account will be opened on the debit side. So the suspense account will again have a debit balance of 905. Ultimately, the suspense account will have a total balance of 1597, and this will be known as the debit balance. This will be known as the debit balance. So 1597 is the debit balance on the suspense account. So this was all from this session, that is the practice to pass. In this webinar, I just tried to have different questions, the different questions from the correction of errors, and these questions were adopted from your ACCA study hub and from the ICAP question bank and the past papers. So these were the very good questions. If any one of you wants the PDF file of these questions along with the answer key, you can definitely reach me out. You can contact me. I'm going to help you out in this particular chapter or the topic. Thank you so much for joining this session. Allah Hafiz.